Man, just getting some iced coffee going right now. I make my own iced coffee, and I'm telling you what, this is... Ooh! Oh! Man, what is it about coffee that just like gets you excited? It's one of the other things outside of like alcohol or that like right when you start drinking it, it's like, look at it. And we're back. Bobo here from BrassReel Brothers. Thanks for tuning back in and clicking into some hot, fresh popcorn. I love it. So guys, thanks for being patient and waiting on this video. It took a little longer than I was wanting to. There was just other movies and trailers coming out I had to put reviews out for. Hurry up! But sadly, this is ending the John Hughes review marathon. Let's take a quick moment to look back. Well, it's been a lot of fun and a wild ride. We're topping it off with the last one and the second of the 2 bonus films from John Hughes. Remember, written by only, not directed. And to give us the icing on that John Hughes cake, Carerr Opportunities.
It all started when I was 15. That's when I invented the artificial cow heart.
Starring Frank Whaley and the magnificent Jennifer Connelly. Ooh! So it starts off immediately in the Midwest, just like all the other John Hughes films. And we're focusing on this guy, Jim Dodge, and he's talking into the camera, kind of breaking the fourth wall. And while all that's happening, very cleverly, you're getting an explanation of who this character is, just through his dialogue talking to the camera. And it's a funny scene too. And while you think that he's talking cool and you're like, man, this is gonna be a cool character, all of a sudden you realize it's not who he is and he gets fired from the job he's at. This character is definitely from the coattails of Ferris Bueller. I feel like that John Hughes was like, man, I love doing the Ferris Bueller's character so much. I'm kind of like not done with that character or that style of character. So this is sort of like the poor man's Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Even from the way that Frank Whaley was looking at that time in his life, he kind of was looking like the Matthew Broderick-esque kid at that time. And he's very devil-may-care on a very calm level. But immediately you start to see what this guy is actually, what they call him in the movie, the town liar.
Going to Paris on an F-14. Got a little peace meeting with the Vice President of Bulgaria.
He's just a BS'er. He BS's all day long.
And here's my accountant right now. Earl, take a bow. Hey, 20 minutes for lunch, Earl, okay? Go buy another suit.
It's almost like he can't help it. But you get to find out later on in the movie why he is that way. It's a cool thing because ultimately the movie is sort of a coming out of your shell type film. Like, we all think we know what we're gonna be throughout high school, but you really don't find out who you are and who you're gonna become until you start becoming that person after high school. And this movie does a good job of sort of showing you that transition, or even like the direct moment of when this person has that realization, or in this case, the 2 people. And like I said, this is only written by John Hughes, but you can still feel it and tell it. But it's directed by a guy named Brian Gordon. He's great, does a phenomenal job. And even if you don't look at the credits of these John Hughes films, you can almost tell which ones he directs and which ones he doesn't. There's just this extra bit of spice and flavor that he adds to it, this emotion. It's definitely something you can't put your finger on that only he did. And it's just this warmth and comfort that he puts into the films and a level of seriousness that he adds to it that kind of catches you off guard. You know, those emotional ninja stars. Emotional ninja stars. And while this movie has moments like that where it kind of digs you in for a second or it reels you into some seriousness, it's nothing on the level of the John Hughes directed. Like, for example, this movie's never gonna make you tear up. But I love it. It's fun all the way through. It's got some definite funny moments in it. And I remember watching this as a kid, and this is right in the beginning of the 90s, right at the end of the 80s. And you all know that the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s kind of felt the same, but you started hearing the musical changes, you started to see a little bit of the fashion changes, and now listen to the beat of the song, a message in my head, like a bump down. As far as quality of the film and production, it definitely feels like that late 80s quality. And the music this time around isn't done by Ira Newborn because it wasn't directed by John Hughes. It's done by Thomas Newman. He's actually really famous. Thomas Newman's had a huge career in Hollywood. There's all these little scenes that are starting out the film and showing you in his little daily life. It just kind of showing you how shitty his life is, and he doesn't even realize it. He just is kind of in this weird bubble of denial, but it's kind of a happy bubble, but it's a stuck bubble. He's not going any further in life with the mentality that he has right now. After the opening scene that's such a good description, you get this other one little tiny scene where he's talking about sashimi.
So, question. When in the world are you going to start serving sashimi?
It's hilarious. And you see Jennifer Connelly at the very beginning of the movie, this gas station scene, which is hilarious with her and Frank Whaley, and he's just trying to BS her just by looking to her, barely even talking to her, just looking at her, he's just trying to BS, and his dad just cock blocks him.
You got fired again, didn't you?
Yeah.
Didn't you?
Which is a good segue into him and his family life. You get to see his family at their house, and it's a very stereotypical Midwestern home, a little more toned down and realistic than some of the other homes you see in John Hughes films prior to this. More of like what I'm used to seeing at my house or my friend's house. But like I said, he's bullshitting his family even. Can't help himself. They're asking if he's seen Josie McKellen, that's Jennifer Connelly's character. And he's like, oh yeah, I saw her, had a cup of coffee with her, which he didn't. He just saw her for a second. Jim Dodge. What a great name for a con/BSer that's like actually nothing. Great name. But you get this painted picture of his family real quick, or his life. He's still living at home. You got to get a job, and they end up telling him he's got to pay rent and all that stuff. You know, he's starting to get the rude awakening of the real world. Like, I love the line with the dad, how he's talking about, I don't want you out of my life, I just want you out of my house. Oh, how many parents and grandparents that I knew that were like that with their kids or grandkids. But that's when we see him getting dropped off at Target. And that's where most of this movie takes place, is in Target. And the whole thing is he's trying to get a job at Target so he can start paying rent and just start moving forward with his life and essentially get out of the house, get out of his dad's hair. And when he's going into the interview at Target, it's great because there's a mix-up with him and John Candy. And John Candy has this awesome cameo scene. It was one of his last scenes before he died. But there's a mix-up. John Candy thinks he's interviewing for the actual management position, and he's treating him like awesome and offering him all these benefits and money. And then he finds out that he's just the night boy. And it just, the demeanor switches immediately. It's just hilarious because that's how it would be in real life. But he's even bullshitting John Candy the whole time. He can't help himself. So that's the setup we get for his character, what his situation is. And then all of a sudden we get to see it switches to Jennifer Connelly and her situation with her dad. And basically her dad's this like rich Texan type guy, and it just paints the picture that he puts a lot of pressure, expects a lot out of his daughter, doesn't have a good relationship with her. Man, I remember the scene when she's coming home and he's like wanting to show her off in front of his clients, and she comes in there and does this whole makeout thing and even embarrasses the dad. Oh God, I remember that scene as a kid just being like, and man, Jennifer Connelly is, look, she's forever gorgeous. She is, to me, one of the like top 5 in Hollywood, always has been for me. And I'm not just talking about her looks, all the way around. She's a great actress, she's talented, everything. But I'm not gonna deny that she's a beautiful woman. And this, to me, is where she was my girl as a kid. No question. We also get a young Dermot Mulroney playing one of the goons in this. There's 2 goons that come into play a little later on in this movie, and you get to see them kind of staring about in the beginning. And that scene that Frank Whaley's breaking the 4th wall in the very beginning, that's what he's kind of talking about, are these criminals that are on the loose. But man, it is a very young Dermot Mulroney, and he does not look like the Dermot Mulroney you used to see today. It's kind of unrecognizable until you're like, oh, that's Dermot Mulroney. And there's some other recognizable people in it, like Jennifer Connelly's dad's played by Nova Willingham. He was the boss of the Miami Dolphins in Ace Ventura. You know, the guy that was like, because he thinks flies are lucky.
Because he thinks flies are lucky.
And then Barry Cohen, he was on Northern Exposure, and he plays this funny guy in Lonesome Dove I grew up watching. He's the dude that says, a whiskey boat.
On a whiskey boat.
So I love when he goes on his first day of the job and he's just like super delusional. He takes a limo to work, which is hilarious. Just because he's trying to impress everybody, including those kids on the way to work. But he gets there and he's already acting like he owns the place. He's walking around just acting like he's some sort of top tier manager or something. It's really funny the way he's behaving. But man, I'm telling you, once you're in the Target store, it is such a trip down memory lane. I mean, it's so nostalgic. I gotta admit, watching this movie again, and Target kind of looks the same. It hadn't really changed a whole lot. Like, seriously, watch this movie, you'll see what I'm talking about. But when he finally gets in there and he gets into his uniform and he's introduced to the night manager, which is William Forsythe, it's hilarious.
Are you a slacker?
And this, he's so intense just about his job at Target.
What did you say? Now I'm asking you a simple question. Are you lazy?
No, sir.
He's acting like he's on steroids and coke. And that's when he finds out he's left there all alone and for the night. So he starts cleaning up and everything. And what's funny, he turns the lights back on and he starts kind of having a good time. All the aisles seem like people have been partying in Target. How the hell is there so much trash everywhere? What, have people been throwing raves at Target during the day when they're open? But there's a great montage of him just doing stupid stuff, watching TV with mannequins, roller skating around with a veil on, eating from the food court. And I remember that. That's when Target used to like actually have a food court where they would make food. And that's when he sees that Jennifer Connelly's in there. And it turns out they went to high school. Basically, they're stuck in there. She was trying to shoplift try to embarrass her dad by getting arrested to get some attention. And he always had a crush on her. And they just have this whole thing to where they're forced to sort of be in the same room now and talk to each other and kind of get to know each other. And there's this dinner scene that's great where he's just bullshitting the whole way through. The whole way through, he's just BSing with her. And she finally, essentially, is kind of fed up with it. She's calling him out on being the town liar, and he's calling her out for being a tease. They start to realize stuff about themselves that they kind of needed to know. But like I was saying, it's a trip down memory lane. You remember when they had those listening stations by where the CDs were in Target and you put the headphones on and just jam out music? There's that awesome dancing scene with her for a second. Ooh, Jennifer. The whole thing now is that he's finding out from her that she is just wanting to leave town and escape this life, and she's actually even asking him if he'd leave with her, and then she's got $52,000 cash on her. That's where the first twist comes in, and then they just decide, oh, also let's hook up. Well, first they dance and then they hook up. But it's sweet because he's really a kind-hearted guy, not like anybody she's ever met before, and he's never been with anybody that's hot like that. Ooh, Jennifer. And all he had to say was, I always dreamed of getting that dance with you. I gotta use that line. Tell you though, that scene where they're dancing, the soundtrack is so 90s. All the love song in this movie, you can definitely start to hear that love ballad, Casey and JoJo type feel start to come about a little.
When the road you're trotting seems all up here.
So this whole movie you've been focused on them two kind of like falling in love a little, maybe planning this future together. Then those two goons come back into the picture. They see that there's these guys in there and they decide to go inside and rob them, and all this great stuff ensues. It's not really a lot of the movies, it's a little part of the movie. It's not what the movie's focused on. At this point, the movie's focused on Frank Whaley and Jennifer Connelly so much, and you're just like, oh, I want them to have a future together. And these two jerks are getting in the way. He ends up BSing his way through with the two goons a little bit too. Just for a second though, he messes that up. All in all, like I said, this movie's not like the John Hughes written and directed films. It's way more lighthearted, but I think it's great. I love it the entire time. Oh man, we can't forget about the toy horse scene. I honestly want to get just a poster of that toy, just her on that toy horse. One of the greatest images of all time. I love you, Jennifer Connelly. Sorry, Paul Bettany, but it is what it is. But when she's on that toy horse, that's where she starts to kind of realize she can fool these two guys, and ultimately she fools them, making them think that she wants to go with him, and then she steals their car and all the stuff. He stays there and just sort of gets some balls about him and finally realizes, you know, I got to do something with myself and my life, and it's time to stop living in this bubble. He gets the shotgun out, has some fun with him over the loudspeaker, and then with a snap of a finger, it just shows he's got them all tied up and ready to go. Doesn't really show you how it happened. And then of course she pulls up. It's super happy ending. Unrealistic as hell, but I love it. And when Dermot Mulroney tries to get on the horse and falls off, and then he gets on the front of the horse backward.
Now, let's go now.
It's hilarious. And they're riding off together in that limo. I love it. He has to show her off in front of those kids again. It's kind of degrading, huh, Frank? Well guys, that wraps up the John Hughes Marathon. I appreciate you guys so much for clicking on this and watching these videos with me. It's been a blast. Been a hell of a ride. Hot Fresh Popcorn is not over. Oh, Hot Fresh Popcorn has just begun. I'm gonna do a few videos before October hits, but October is what's coming up, baby. October is what I live for. It's like my Christmas. So we're gonna be doing 5 videos a week in October, Monday through Friday. So we're gonna have 20 videos, and I'm gonna do a special one on Halloween. I will put out a little preview though, just to show you guys what's coming up, what I'm gonna do, why I'm doing them, all that stuff. But man, it's gonna be fun. I can't wait. So start getting pumped. Tell all your friends. Thank you again, guys. Love y'all with all my heart. Remember to look for BrassReel Brothers on Facebook. Look for Bobby Williams on Facebook. You can catch me on Twitter, BrassReel Bobby at BrassReel. Don't forget to click that subscribe button and the like button and tell everyone. And last but not least, if life gives you lemons, make some hot fresh popcorn.